Hi guys, welcome. Thank you for watching. As you know, I'm Rudy.
I'm Jules.
And there's a very sing-song voice there. I like that. Sounds like Ty. I'm Jules. Anyway, I digress. And so this is like the 7th time we've tried recording this, so I'm just going to keep going anyway and see what happens. So, as you may or may not know, I've been teaching the 3 Principles Understanding for about 18 years, trained with Sydney Banks, and more recently, the teaching of it has dropped away, and we've been finding ourselves in the fact of it, which is really this boundless space of unconditional love or compassion before the words of it. So we created these courses called Nature's Mind, which really seeks to take people from concepts to something as an experiential embodiment or like a direct feeling of what it is the 3 principles are really, or in my mind, are trying to point towards. And so this webinar coming up is looking at even part of one module. There's 5 modules on the upcoming Nature's Mind weekend. This is just briefly going over one of the modules, but not in its entirety. And this webinar is really how, now hold your horses and don't throw bananas at the screen. We have seen how the 3 principles of mind, thought, and consciousness absolutely unify with things like law of attraction, the metaphysical, the science of consciousness, and non-duality. Now, I know you may be listening and thinking, well, that's not possible because they're incompatible, etc., etc. But if you're interested, I would advise you to keep watching, because if you can hear what the webinar is talking about, and many people did on the webinar, we had a lot of clarity, it's going to blow your socks off.
Let's list the modules.
So anyway, the modules of the upcoming Nature's Mind weekend in November are, do you want to say them?
The Universal Me,
which is collapsing the personal and universal to one compassionate beingness.
Expanding the bandwidth of perception.
Being able to tune into this field of infinite potential to have a much bigger bandwidth of what we're calling reality. Ooh.
Going deeper into the malleable universe.
This field of potential, which you could call universal mind or consciousness, it is responsive. There's information within it, and it's malleable. There is a power behind life that you can commune with, and this is all about that.
And conscious creation, my favorite.
What's your famous quote?
We are creation with the power to create.
Jules cannot. So we look into our innate capacity of creation via our emotions, emotion being energy and motion. This energy can ripple out within this field of this one power, and we can create the lives that we want to live. Now, again, all this may sound completely incompatible with the 3 principles, but this webinar coming up will actually unify it and show how, when seen from a different perspective, it is all one innate and natural power. And the feeling of that, if you're a human being at least, could be compassion. When I go beyond concepts to the essence. Anything else?
Love and understanding is compassion.
So, grab onto your seats. Here comes a webinar, and we'll see you soon. So, hi everybody, welcome to Nature's Mind, the energetic nature of life. And this is a free webinar rather, around a longer course that we do called Nature's Mind. And the reason we've called it Nature's Mind is that there is a nature to life, a nature to how we work, a nature to how the universe works. And actually there's a nature to what we're calling consciousness. And guess what? It's all the same thing. I've just used different words, but it's all the same thing. And so to be quite honest, what's happened with me is I was very into things like spiritual healing, non-duality. I was a clinical hypnotherapist. I did Qigong. I had lots of which you could call sensitive and psychic phenomena happen in my life. And when I came across the principles about 18 years ago, I was kind of told to throw it all away. The principles are everything you need, and just focus on this. And I thought, okay, I'll just kind of go with it. And it did kind of make sense. But then fast forward until, 2.5 years ago?
3 years ago, yeah.
I met Jules, and Jules kind of, well, you say about this stuff. You were doing it naturally, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was very, very particleized expression of this oneness. I was a marketing exec and wasn't into anything that Rudy was into. I was into making sure my lawn was mowed in a certain angle so the people going by could.
It's very important.
Yes, just very particleized things. And then I fell in. I had an experience. I had lost my son, and I fell into this quietness, this essence, this space that was very familiar. But to me, what I knew, I've never been there before. So it was a familiar knowing that we all know, that we all possess. And it's like watching a movie, but yet it's raining outside. And when you turn the movie off, you're more tuned into the rain. You're more tuned into the birds chirping, to the wind. And so I started to just explore this pathway, and it's just been beautiful. And in doing so, I met Rudy in Hawaii 2.5 years ago. Yeah.
And so at the time, Jules was having many kind of experiences that you could label as various things that I spoke about, but you didn't know what they were. You hadn't labeled them. You hadn't really read about them. So there was just a natural occurrence of this phenomena or this essence. And it reminded me of my experience and what I was into before coming across the 3 principles. And having 18 years of the principle, back then actually 16 years of the principles, and trained with Sydney Banks and et cetera, all of a sudden, both of us uncovered a unified way in which many of these apparently separate or different understandings, approaches, could effortlessly unite with the understanding of the 3 principles, which, to be honest, completely broadened my perspective on everything. And we've been running Nature's Mind trainings, and I'm kind of ashamed to say, but many people who are on that felt that they couldn't talk about various things. They were excluded from looking into things. They were told not to read this or not to read that, or no, we don't talk about that in the principles. So they felt very a bit pigeonholed.
Yeah. Sometimes
an understanding can free you, but it frees you into a slightly larger straitjacket. And what we want to share on this webinar is the possibility that you can actually take the straitjacket off completely and fly. There is a nature, a unified nature to all of it. And this has completely changed how I and we talk about what we're defining as the 3 principles, to encompass, embrace, and unify many apparently separate fields. So we're going to talk about that. And also we're going to talk about that and how actually this is the heart of compassion. So it has very real life implications, day to day, very, very real life implications for us. Also, I like to say we're not just going to be talking about theories. We're going to be talking about stuff that we've had direct experience into ourselves. So it's coming from a more naturally embodied perspective. So wish us luck. So where do we start? So I'm going to start with a metaphor. Now, this is probably the biggest jigsaw puzzle piece you've ever seen in your life. And I'm going to do a diagram. I'm going to do a double whammy, actually. So when you've got jigsaw pieces, they don't seem to fit together, and you kind of try and fit them together. Like, how do the three principles fit in as non-duality? And like, where does the law of attraction come in? And where does spiritual healing fit with all of this stuff? And then the metaphysical, or the science of consciousness, like, how does it all fit with the three principles? And then all you need to do is get a bird's eye view and see everything from a completely different perspective. And then it's actually always fit together, but our perspective was slightly skewed. Mm-hmm. So it's never about the understanding, it was about our viewing the understanding from our perspective. So I want to do that in a different way and hope this makes sense. So science says that everything is energy. I mean, Newton worked this out over 400 years ago. Everything is energy. And mysticism has been saying for a long time, everything is this one conscious state, a state of consciousness. You could also call it universal mind, or God, or Great Spirit. I kind of like the word this field of infinite quantum potential, because I'm a bit more scientific, but if that doesn't work for you, please use whatever word works for you. But what we're really saying, there is a boundless infinite space, essence or power before creation. Now, I used to think that everything was creation until having which I may or may not talk about later on, a direct experience of the beforeness of creation. And when I say before and after, this has nothing to do with time, because this is outside of time. Time doesn't exist. But I'm going to use the words before and after just as a reference point to try and explain something. So this great beforeness, I believe Sydney Banks called it the isness, which was before, and the allness, which was after. I don't want to steal Sydney Banks' words, so I'm just going to call it the beforeness and the afterness. So non-duality would call this pure consciousness. I'm going to try and use different language and words so it makes sense to more people. And the reason we're doing this is we want to show you how everything unites within the understanding of the three principles, but you're going to have to watch me draw pictures and show you bits of puzzles and stuff, because metaphors, when you talk about what's before, metaphors about the few things that actually do it, because you can't talk about something before creation. You can just point in a direction.
Right.
So, okay, so I'm going to use language. Please turn it around in your head if you don't like the language I use. I'm talking about pure, unfiltered consciousness, universal mind, God, the quantum field now. Now, I'm going to call this the ocean. So there is this ocean that is outside of time, outside of location, before matter, that is everywhere, and there's nothing that it isn't. Now, this is an ocean, but as you can see, I've tried to draw the infinity sign within this ocean to show that there's nothing that this is not. And this is a completely natural, this is nature, this is a natural field. It is the natural building blocks of what we call creation. It's before creation, but creates creation in a sense. Now, because there's nothing that this is not, everything arises within this beforeness, which we could now call the afterness, or you could call the formless and the form. But there's not two, there's not the formless and the form, there's not the before and the after, there's not the quantum field and creation like two things. It's one thing concurrently arising, looking like two things. As an example, I don't know who of you here has ever been in an MRI machine. An MRI machine, me too, it uses this strange thing in quantum physics called superposition, where it spins your particles clockwise and anti-clockwise at the same time. Now, how can a particle spin this way and that way at the same time? I don't know. You can't get it with your head, but it seems to be true. And Einstein, one of Einstein's first revelations was that before Einstein, they used to think there was like matter, which is fixed mass and location, and energy, which is no mass and no location and everywhere. And they couldn't make sense of the physical universe. And Einstein realized via epiphany, then got proved a couple of decades later, that matter and energy were the same thing concurrently. So how come a something and a no thing, energy, and a something, matter, be concurrently the same thing? I don't know, it messes my head up, but we just know it to be true. One last thing, the word infinity, infinite, infinite, everything and nothing. If I do that, finite, a something. Within the word infinity is the something and the everything. So within this ocean, within this quantum field is nothing and everything concurrently at the same time. So within this field, I'm going to try and draw this a bit bigger. You have these arisings. This is the world one, by the way. So within this field, this infinite field of potential, arises people and trees and planets and universes and dogs and Gretchens and Helens. Like within this field, there's an arising of what we call physical matter, or now we're talking about creation. Now, this isn't separate from the field. It's an arising within the field. It's not that this is an illusion and is not real because it's apparently matter. It's the universe mattering. It's the formless, forming. It's a bit like, I know this is a huge cliche, but if you look at the ocean, it looks like waves are kind of separate because they have their own shape within the ocean, but they kind of dissolve back into the ocean and are connected to the ocean. So The wave isn't separate from the ocean, it's the ocean waving. We are, I'm going to call this ocean the universe now. Again, I keep changing my words here. We are the universe humaning right now. Anything to add to that before I go on to the next point, honey?
Humaning. I love that. So let's take science. Okay, we're going to call this, I'll describe what this is a little bit later. But off of this, let's take the history of science or the evolution of science. And we had, the world was flat. And then we have another paradigm. The earth does not spin. And people argued about that because they said, well, if the earth spins, then all of the oceans would be slopped up to one side. And so that's another paradigm. Another one is, this one's quite interesting. The planets, prior to being called planets, they were called wandering stars. And planeta means wandering. So they're just wandering stars. So now they find that the planets are not stars, they're actually planets. So that's another paradigm shift. And someone by the name of Descartes came in and decided to find the deepest truth. And in doing so, he came up with a statement that could not be doubted. And in Latin, it's cogito ergo sum, and that means I think, therefore I am. And how he came about that is he doubted. He's like, well, in science, we found out that the earth isn't flat, that they're not wandering stars, they're planets, that the earth spins regardless of the ocean being still. And he started to think about himself. And then he even thought, well, I could be dreaming. So the only thing he came to was that he was aware. He couldn't doubt that he was aware. I think, therefore I am.
So he boiled it down to what was actually true. When you get rid of all the things that aren't true, there's a fact of what is true.
Right.
And that is that we're aware.
That we're aware.
Yeah.
That we're aware. And that's the space that when there's a silence, when there's a ceasing of the whirling of mind stuff, and in the Yoga Sutras, the second line of the Yoga Sutras is ceasing of the whirling of mind stuff. When you cease the whirling of mind stuff, you fall into this beautiful space. And that's what this is. That's what this is. This is a big I right here. And we perceive things differently. We perceive things wholly. Not wholly, but wholly with a W, holistically. And when we see that we all are perceiving things in our own unique way, we fall back into this understanding and love. And with that births compassion. Compassion to embrace the differences. Compassion to understand that we are unique expressions of this consciousness. Understanding that within this consciousness, we're going to disagree. We're going to see things a little bit differently. But that's what we're trying to do today, is embrace it from a unique, holistic perspective to kind of see how the pieces fit together. And we spent a whole weekend on this, and it's really quite beautiful.
Mm. When we overcome our own mind separations and dualities, there's just the one. And I'm going to build into that, so that may not might not make a bit of sense, but an implication of this book we're leading is compassion. So bear with us a moment. I'm going to finish what I started here. So we're aware, and we have our own uniqueness within that. So what happens is throughout history, this beforeness and this afterness, this void, and then the creation from the void, which are one. Like you can freeze water and it's an ice cube, and it looks like the ice cube is separate from the water or different from the water, but it's just water in a different state.
Right.
Creation is this formlessness in a different state. It's not separate from, it's not an illusion. It's just the formless forming concurrently at the same time. So when people have observed or had direct experience into the beforeness throughout history, I have a little eye here. They have a direct experience, a bit like a crack in the universe opens, and they have a deep, profound insight, and they see part of the nature of the whole. And for instance, someone can do this and realize, wow, everything is one unsplittable power, and nobody is separate from this power. But people can feel this deeply in their consciousness. And then we can call that something like non-duality. People can have a deep insight, here's another little eye, into the nature of this. And come out and go, wow.
This is hard. So what do I have to do? If you can just...
Hang on, who's muted?
It was Etsy.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So other people have a deep insight into this ocean, and they can go, this energy, this information within this energy. I mean, Sydney Banks called it, we live in a universe of knowledge.
Yeah.
Quantum physics would call that we live within a quantum field of information.
A field of being.
Different words kind of pointing to the same thing. Now, someone can have a deep insight into this, and then they can say, this universal energy is responsive and it's full of information. You could then call this being psychic, meaning tapping into this field of information. Another person can have an insight into this and go, oh my goodness, like there's an intelligence in this system where like energy attracts like energy. There's a sympathetic resonance here. What we mean by sympathetic resonance is, for a practical example, if you pluck a D string or any string on a guitar, the corresponding D string on your second guitar will start vibrating.
And only the D string.
And only the D string.
Yeah, so there's a harmonic, there's an exchange between two things, and that's resonance. Resonance, the Latin term is resonatia, and it means to echo. And it only echoes its like partner. So we're echoing.
Yeah, so there seems to be built into this natural system this capacity of echoing, of resonance. And you could then call that the law of attraction. I'll just put LOA to make it short, law of attraction. So I'm going to do one more. You can look into this field. And you can realize, wow, like my experience of this field is coming from my perception of this field.
Right.
It's all thought. Like, I can't have a direct experience of this field without making meaning, creating stories, and having an emotional response. Like, we are feeling what we're thinking in the moment.
Right.
And also we're connected and we're whole and we're part of this field. You could call that realization the three principles. 3 Ps for short. So now what's happened is, I'm just going to circle these. You've got here, 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 here. You've got all these different insights into this one natural field. Okay? People have seen different aspects of it and have then called it stuff. We've called it 3 principles. We've called it non-duality. We've called it the metaphysical or psychic phenomena. We've called it law of attraction. I can actually do this all day because there's so many different perspectives of this one field. But what we're saying is, what can happen, I'm going to go to another page. This is...
Well, let me say one thing. This is beautiful right here, Rudy, because science would look at this, all of this form-based, particleized expression is to the Latin word for science, it comes from scere, and that means to know. And the interesting thing about consciousness, that comes from the Latin term conscere, and that means to know with. So all of these would not be possible without consciousness, without that knowing, without that deep life essence.
Yeah, all of these are just perspectives of the one life essence.
Yeah.
They're not separate from it. They are all aspects of this field. This field, okay, this field births humans, and as a human, we're aware, we're conscious, and we're alive. 3 principles. That's not like a belief, like we're all aware, we're all alive, and we all think something. You're thinking something about this talk now. You're either thinking this is useless, this is great, this is informational, you're bored, like we're all going to have a unique experience. Non-duality, it's all one, it's all one. There's no one separate within this incredible infinite oneness. The metaphysical, we live in this field of information, and as a human we can tap into the field because we're entangled within this field. So of course we can get information outside of our locality. Law of attraction, this field is a resonant field where similar like energies match with like energies. Like, it's all natural. When you get rid of mankind's interpretations, the form we've created about the natural field, there is just the natural field. And as humans, we're looking at it or having insight into it and then coming up with stuff about it. Then what happens?
From our unique perspective.
From our unique perspective, you've now got human-made concepts, perspectives from this field and then one understanding argues with another understanding. I'm more true than you. No, I'm more true than you are. I'm much more spiritual than you. No, I'm more spiritual than you.
Okay, those aren't planets, they're stars. The Earth is flat. The Earth doesn't spin. But back then they used to get beheaded and burned at the stake for arguing with the wrong person. So a little bit safer now.
We are a bit safer. What I want to say is you don't have to pick 3 principles: non-duality, the metaphysical, the science of consciousness, whatever it is you're looking into. They are not separate from what you're currently looking at. They are still an aspect of the whole.
Right.
You have to go beyond human ideas and concepts and teachings back to the essence. And you see the whole of the essence. An implication is compassion. I used to think that the three principles, I shouldn't look at non-duality, I shouldn't look at law of attraction, I shouldn't be interested in the metaphysical. Like, I shouldn't read anyone who wasn't a three principles person.
And I came along.
Then Jules came along. Because everyone else was kind of a bit wrong. There's this, I'm just going to say, there's a spiritual egotism within the principles. And actually within all of these, not just the principles, saying this is the way, the truth, and the light. And this is the only way. That is dogma, because there's nothing that this field isn't.
Right.
We are entangled within this field, and yes, we do navigate within this infinite field using the power of thought. The three principles is absolutely right. Also, I've noticed that like energies attract like energies. Well, that's true too. And actually, there's nothing separate within this field, which you could call non-duality. Yep, that's true too. So instead of kind of saying everything's wrong apart from my perspective, we could actually embrace that beyond human concept, there is a field of infinite potential. And this field of infinite potential arises and unarises, and it dances and it sings. And within this celestial tapestry, there's just different variabilities happening, which we could call natural laws. As a metaphor, when you look at the physical universe, it's not that gravity is the only way and electromagnetism isn't, because electromagnetism and gravity and the strong and the weak nuclear force are all aspects of physical creation. It's not as if the weak nuclear force, which kind of spins particles, and electromagnetism, they don't butt heads, because from the physical sciences, we know that all aspects of this physical field. So why do we do it psychologically and spiritually? We battle one another. What would happen if we embrace before humans' ideas? Law of attraction, in my mind, has nothing to do with manifesting your perfect convertible red sports car, and everything to do with the resonant nature of this field of potential.
Yeah, the harmonic resonant nature.
Non-duality, in my mind, has nothing to do with vilifying and saying you don't exist, and everything to do with this incredibly beautiful, intimate entanglement and connection we have with the love of creation. The three principles isn't just saying it's just your thinking, so get over it. It's saying we can only experience via thought, because that's how we perceive. The metaphysical isn't saying that, oh, we're going to do woo-woo stuff and, I don't know, we're going to project our consciousness. And it's really saying that because we're entangled within this field of information, some of us, if we're interested, can kind of like download information in the field. Like we download new updates to our computer. It's not woo-woo, it's natural.
Right.
So one of the things the Buddha said, I used to be a Buddhist many years ago, 20 years ago, and he said, you have to go beyond your teacher, beyond the teaching, beyond what you've learned, beyond the books, back to the essence. There you will find what it is that you are looking for.
Some of the most amazing physicists, unique, a small pocket of physicists, are saying the only way to truly understand consciousness is introspection. not the degrees behind your name, not years and years of science, but going within, quieting the mind and going within.
That's what David Bohm did, the father of quantum physics.
Yeah.
And Einstein was a deeply insightful man as well.
So really, this is beautiful. So when we hear true nature now, we say the only thing true about true nature is this life essence, toing and froing. We as humans have such judgment towards ourselves for thinking the wrong thing, the I should have, I could have, why didn't I? And that's not my true self. Well, the true self is all of that encompassed into one. We are beautiful, unique expressions. Just like the chickens outside. I use these chickens because in the winter they molt. They go through this molting and they sleep longer. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not dying because there's lack of egg production. Excuse me. Lack of egg production. They're going through the natural life essence, the cycle of life. Same as the trees. Once the trees lose all their leaves, if one didn't know better, but we know better, if we focused in on that, we would think that they were dying and something was wrong. But it's the cycle of life. We, at times, I know I get judgmental of myself and I feel bad. But if I think, well, that's not my true nature, then I would think this is my false nature. There's something wrong. There isn't anything that this isn't. It's this beautiful essencing. It's consciousness humaning. And when we drop the judgments, we feel better. We spend less time on I shouldn't be doing that and more time just allowing whatever arises.
When you have, it's beautiful, honey. When you've got a duality in your mind, for instance, if you've got true nature, and false nature, you could also call that the separate self and the true self. There's lots of different words. If you've got something which is true and something which is false, you've now got a duality between a this and a that, and a right and a wrong, and a real and an unreal, true and a false. You've got a two-ness happening. Now, there's nothing that can be false because everything's within this one field. There's nothing that it isn't. So when we look at our true nature, we have to go before human concepts and teachings and teachers and realize our true nature is nature. There's nothing that nature isn't. When we see our true nature is nature and we observe nature, like Jules was saying, there is an ebb and a flow to nature. Night and dark and winter and summer and stormy skies and clear skies and dark nights of the soul and sunny days of the human inspiration. Like there is an ebb and flow. Infinity sign. An ebb and flow of the human experience. Infinity. Feeling sad, feeling happy, feeling inspired, not feeling motivated, being productive, being unproductive. Like this is the nature of nature. Nature ebbs and flows. We could call it creation and destruction, but it's really just energy dancing, but we call it creation and destruction. So what would happen if our true nature was nature? The natural ebb and flow. Compassion, because now you haven't vilified something as non-existent or false, okay? You're not battling to try and be in your true nature and not in your false nature.
We're not vilifying the ego.
We're not vilifying something, we're saying something's wrong, and we are embracing the ebb and flow, the nature of the human experience just as it is. And sometimes I can be like Gandhi, other days I can be like Saddam Hussein.
No, never.
Well, I get close to it sometimes. Like, I can ebb and flow. We all ebb and flow. So why would we want to vilify part of ourselves as non-existent and not true and wrong? You can't judge yourself back to wholeness, but you can love yourself back to wholeness, because love is the essence. Okay, this is where I get into personal beliefs here. My personal experience of diving into this ocean was love. That's the nearest word or label I could say. It wasn't that, but that's what I can say for human emotional perspective. A love so intimate, so divinely majestic, so all powerfully expansive that I broke out from this oneness, and I was weeping and weeping and weeping for hours till I dried up all my tears because it was so beautiful. This is the building blocks. This is the ocean. So when we look at our personal health, the power within, it's not personal to us. It's entangled within us because we are the field humaning. We're built from this stuff. And when we stop judging ourselves and splitting things into dualities, true and false, illusion, non-illusion, separate, essential, and collapse the polarities, you've got the universe humaning. You've got the ebbs and the flows of the human experience, and you can just rest in being completely imperfectly perfect, just as you are. And guess what? You see the wholeness of this field. You stop arguing on Facebook pages about who's right and who's wrong, and how law of attraction's stupid and the three principles are the only way, or the three principles are rubbish and non-duality is right. You stop judging, comparing and complaining and saying that you're wrong, and you just love people. Because it's so simple. It's love. I'm going to swear. It's just fucking love. Get over yourselves on the Facebook page. Stop arguing with one another. Stop trying to be more spiritual than one another. Stop trying to say that you're right and you're wrong, and just freaking love one another.
Beautiful.
Listen, embrace, find commonality, not what's different. Or I just look at social media, and I generally don't get involved, and I just think it's creating so much division, when actually it's just the freaking wholeness, completeness, timeless, locationless of the universe dancing, pretending to be separate, and then arguing with itself.
Right, and remembering and forgetting. And when we're forgetting, it doesn't mean we're in our false nature or ego, or people label it as that, label it as wrong, but it's almost like there needs to be a contraction in order to have an expansion. There needs to be a forgetting in order to have that beautiful remembering. Just like the inchworm. Sorry to our students that have seen this, but the inchworm, in nature, it contracts. Beautiful, Gretchen, so it can expand and evolve and move forward. not vilifying the ego. It's not true self, false self. It's holistically whole self. The dance, in and out, remembering and forgetting. It's the beauty. When we embrace it holistically, we spend less time judging ourselves.
And other people.
And other people. And that, for me, is compassion. When we understand it holistically, everything, we understand when people are having a difficult time, that there's a battle going on inside of them. They're in their forgetting mode. It's all part of being human, and it's beautiful.
This one power, okay, it consciously, deliberately, for whatever reason, I do not know the mind of God here, but it deliberately creates, on purpose, it deliberately creates a sense of separation on purpose. It's not doing it by mistake. If we didn't have a sense of separation, I wouldn't know Jules is there and I'm here. If I reword that from a absolute level, there isn't a Jules there and a me here. It's just all consciousness. But living that way is a bit like saying nothing exists because everything's just particles.
Right.
Or the Taj Mahal palace doesn't exist. It's all just atoms.
Right.
I've been to the Taj Mahal. I've touched the cool marble on a burning hot day. I've listened to the Hindu pujas float over the airwaves and heard the beep of the rickshaws outside. I've been to the Taj Mahal. It is there. But also, it's atoms.
Yeah, it's the organic chemist. I love this. The organic chemist. We're made of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. And the organic chemist made of this bends down with his magnifying glass and studies hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. The beauty in that, it's the consciousness reaching out, expressing almost to understand itself, to change, to flow, to grow. It's the grittiness of life that births the smooth. It's the sand on the beach that births the glass-like pebbles when it tumbles the rocks. It's the volcano that seems like death and destruction, but it's birthing new land, new love, new relationships. I know I was in a volcano in 2018.
The ebb and flow of nature.
Yeah, the ebb and flow of nature. We don't see a true self, a true nature. We see a whole self, a whole nature. Because to say something is true, we begin to judge.
Something is wrong.
Something is wrong.
So if you stop vilifying the sense of separation as wrong and you embrace it as a natural part of life, okay, because we all live in a sense of a separation, otherwise you couldn't communicate, you couldn't think. I get to fall in love with her over there. I get to kiss my wife. I get to have flavoursome food. I get to play with my nieces and nephews. None of this will be possible without a sense of separation. Mm-hmm. So we could stop vilifying things that are separate or wrong and embrace that, yes, the universe creates separation for the human experience to exist. It's doing it on purpose for us to have a human experience. As soon as we start vilifying what is natural, we create dualities in our mind, which creates more judgment. Mm-hmm. Love is a mind uncontaminated by judgment. Love is a mind without false dualities. Love is a mind that just is and doesn't see black and white or fat or thin or Indian or American. It observes that. It observes that someone's shorter and taller. It observes that people have black skin or white skin, but it doesn't judge it. There's a difference between observing and judging. Love is a mind, is an observational mind, and it is a mind that sees that we are brothers and sisters of the same home. We are within the same home. creating a completely unique and different experience. So we've been talking actually, so I want to kind of go to you guys, but just to sum up, let's just take a deep breath. Let's just stop pretending that we're right and people are wrong. And why don't we just start looking at our commonality with other people rather than the differences? Why don't we start embracing our natural nature with all the ups and downs and the separations and the ebbs and the flows? And then it is just what is. And that essence, to me, I would call that compassion or love. Gretchen, you've got your hand up. Did you want to say something, my dear? If so, unmute yourself.
I just realized something, Rudy and Jules, about my experience when George was ill and dying, where I read something and all the resentments I had about his illness and dying and everything else melted. And I realized when you're talking that I fell into that place of oneness. And in that place of oneness was such joy, which made the last year of George and my time together so tender. You know, so now I have the experience, and now I understand it. 3 years later, but that's okay. There's no time anyway, right?
Right.
I miss the illusion.
And that births passion.
Yeah. And it makes it come alive more too. Right now, that sense of joy, that sense of love, that sense of tenderness. So what you're talking about today is what I've been looking for.
Say that again, Gretchen. Your audio went out then.
Oh, what you're talking about today is what I've been looking for, and it's just, this is, yeah.
Oh,
Thank
Thank
you, Gretchen.
I just wanted to say that this is like a very brief overview. We do a whole weekend going into this in a lot more depth on the Nature's Mind course. I'll send you a link to that. This is just a very quick overview. That's why we've been talking quickly. Anyway, over to you guys. I haven't had a chance to read the messages yet, so I'm going to do that. But has anybody got any comments, would like to say anything? Unmute yourself and do that now. I'd love to hear what you guys are hearing, and if you disagree, you're welcome. We could talk to that.
Can I say something, if that's okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I've been looking in the direction. I've been looking in the direction of 3 principles for, I think it was probably about 3 years, alongside people like Anne, who are on here, people like Liz Scott and others. And I found it when I kind of first started, well, when I first kind of attended a session and heard about it, I found it incredibly profound. And I felt that it really resonated with me. But then what started, I guess, to make me have a lot of thinking subsequently is when I then started to hear different things about things that I had valued in the past, now somehow been seen as wrong. So whether it's things like meditation, mindfulness, you know, NLP back in the day, and all the kind of Anthony Robbins as was back in the day, and kind of hearing that was wrong, that then led me down a whole another weird place of thinking about, well, hang on, that felt really helpful to me at the time. So how am I now in this space going to be judgmental and critical about that? So I guess I just wanted to say that I found just, you know, this evening's brief insight just really kind of comforting. And it's made me, I guess, reconnect with the kind of three principles approach that I first understood, which was something basically about oneness and love. So just to say that, really. And yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Indu. I'll just read a comment. Moshi Hoffman, sorry if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, Moshi. This amazing webinar answers everything. Thank you, Rudy and Jules, not just for this amazing webinar, but for all that you do. You have changed the life of millions. I have no doubt about that. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, and also he's gone on to say 3 longtime big enemies in the Middle East had made formal peace yesterday. Beautiful. I'm not going to read the comments. I'm going to try and read the comments when someone else is talking. So thank you, Gretchen and Bindu. Would anyone else like to comment? Oh, Lee's got your hand up. Go ahead, Lee.
Actually, I was scratching my head, but I'm feeling a little bit lost. No, that's the wrong choice of words. My original question has been answered like in 50 different ways right now.
Oh.
And it's amazing because I came to a realization recently that, like, you've heard of the 4 agreements. So have you heard of that? So don't take things personally. Be impeccable with your word. There's a book called The 4 Agreements. And I used to teach also something called the 4 Golden Rules. It's like a mindfulness in terms of eating and so on. And I came to that realization that all of these are now implications rather than applications. So let's suppose don't take things personally. Well, that becomes an implication as opposed to a thing that you need to do. And I come from NLP background, so of course I love the NLP as well, became implications as opposed to applications. So my question was, and I'm still going to say it, but you can understand why I'm a little bit embarrassed now, was the idea of the single paradigm. So that we're living in a feeling of our thinking in the moment. And my question was about how can outside circumstances not play a part? Because, okay, so I'm thinking in the moment that something happens, my experience of it, however, if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have had the experience. Now that was my question. I'm sort of seeing it now that is so irrelevant when we go into what you're talking about now. So, I mean, I would still appreciate an answer, I guess.
Cool. So what happens is, looking at high logically, of course, we are expressions within this field, not separate from the field, but we are expressions within this field. And within this field has consciously decided to give us a sense of a separation, to have a human experience. No sense of separation, no human experience. There'll just be a nobody floating in a sea of nothing, okay? Separation comes in, bang, now you got the ebb and flow, the human experience. This isn't right or wrong, this is just what happens. So now talking about within the human experience, the Sid called it the thought is the rudder that sails a ship through the sea of life. I mean, I've probably killed his quote, but he said something along the lines of that. And the Buddha said, with our thought, we create the world. And the quantum physicists said, with our thoughts, we create the world, then says, I didn't do it. Like, so for millennia, people have been pointing to thought as the creator of the human experience. You could be pedantic and say, no, it's not thought, it's pure consciousness. But again, that's like saying the Taj Mahal doesn't exist and everything's atom. So relatively speaking, it's thought in the moment. So the outside world affecting us via thought. So for instance, if a mad gunman ran into all of your rooms right now and pointed a gun at everybody on this webinar, okay, most people would look at the gunman and probably feel, I don't know, they'll probably be slightly worried about this, as most people would. Now, what it looks like, okay, completely naturally, is that the mad gunman is making me feel anxious. That's what it looks like. However, what we know from this understanding is that we can only have an experience of the mad gunman if we have thinking about the mad gunman. Because if we're in a coma, on this webinar, a mad gunman will burst in and we wouldn't even know it. So there'll be no experience of the mad gunman. So you have to have the faculty of thought, which you could also call the faculty of consciousness, if you will, because it's all the same thing. So via this faculty of thought or consciousness, we look at mad gunman and we've got a perception of the mad gunman, and then we create, or what's created is our feeling state. Now, the outside world isn't a determinant to how we feel, okay? But the outside world has a seeming influence on us. Because for most of us, if a mad gunman burst in, most of us may feel anxious. That's a seeming influence compared to not a mad gunman breaking in. But it is a seeming influence because, like Jules here, for example, you were walking around the fields in Hawaii and you got charged by a bull.
Yeah. Well, the Big Island is like the last frontier, and there's acres and acres of wildness. There's wild boars and there's wild bulls. And I was looking for a horse that had gotten out, and I was going down a hill, and I heard this thud, thud, thud. I turn around, and there was a big bull running down the hill. And I immediately think three things. What an idiot I am to walk around here without a dog. And then I thought, this is how I'm going to die. And then I thought, well, there's nothing I can do. And there was an overwhelming feeling of calmness, of peace. And then I pulled my phone out of my bra, because I hold my phone in my bra and started videoing. And I videoed the bull, and he veered off, kicked his legs up, and sat there, and we had a moment. There was an energy exchange between the two of us, and I actually went up and touched him on the nose, and I have that on video. I'll put it in our Nature's Mind group. But yeah, so there were three separate experiences to this one outside circumstance.
So you could say that, you know, if there wasn't a bull, Jules wouldn't have felt, you know, anxious. And yeah, you'd be true. If there wasn't a bull, she probably wouldn't have felt anxious. That's the seeming influence. But the fact that she felt she was stupid, and then she felt terrified she was going to die, and then she felt peaceful, that's coming from Jules. That's coming from thought in the moment, not the bull. So the outside world isn't and can ever be 100% determinant. It can never be, because it's all an inside job. But there can be the illusion, there can be the seeming influence of the outside world, have a very, very real seeming influence. I hope that kind of makes sense. Cool. Thank you, Lee. Okay, anybody else? Anyone else would like to say anything, got a question or a comment at all? Michael. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I just want to know, it kind of leads on to what you just said, but what about people that purposefully do bad things to people? And if you are the victim of said bad thing, how do you accept that that's a part of nature? Like,
I can answer that.
if it's had lifelong implications on you, how do you,
Great question, Michael. Thank you.
That's a beautiful question.
Rudy, guys, you've muted yourselves.
Sorry.
I mean,
Yeah.
my lip reading's pretty good, so I got about 50% of it. But
yeah, we were testing your lip reading skills actually. So
we failed.
Thanks, Toby.
Thanks, Toby. You're a star.
And that's it. That's your
and
answer.
so that was the question.
Yeah.
That was the answer there. So if you missed it, then tough luck, Buster. Anyway, so try again, honey.
In my experience, I've kept pretty quiet about the history. It's coming out in my book, so keep an eye out for it. No, but I had my experience, but just moments prior to this experience of falling into this pain and this anguish that enveloped my physical being, there was a lot of anger at these individuals for creating this pain in my life, for doing things to me. But after falling into it, I realized that it wasn't happening to me. It was just happening. And that's what I mean about when you have love and understanding, when you understand things from that deep perception, that awareness, that oneness, you see things differently. And looking back, the people that were hurting most in my life were hurting other people. There was a battle going on inside of them that they didn't know was real, or they didn't know that was going on. They were perceiving their life in a way, believing their thinking, believing their own judgment, and moving forward from that contracted, tight space. And some pretty horrific things happened in my life, or back then I would say happened to me, but they just were arising. They just happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps, Michael.
Let's try, hang on a minute. So just to add to that, Michael, it's hard when difficult things happen to think, well, that's nature, that's some kind of benign power doing that, like what, why? And your question has been in my mind like a needle in my mind for years. I was like, well, why do stuff like that happen if it's all love? And the only thing I can say to that really now is that when you look at nature, like the fires that are burning towns down right now, happen in Australia, now it's happening on the west coast. When you look at the volcanic eruption in Hawaii that displaced thousands of people, like there's a ferocity to nature, but actually from a human perspective, we look at it and we call it destruction and what's bad. But from an absolute perspective, it's just kind of, I don't mean this in a careless way or a non-compassionate way, but nature's just naturing. And we don't know why, because I don't understand the mind of God personally. I just know it seems to be so. What I do know from a human perspective is when I was growing up, I was so terrified I couldn't scream. There was violence, there was abuse, alcoholism, and mental health issues in my family that should have scarred me for the rest of my life. But seeing how this works, I realize I'm not experiencing my past. I'm experiencing right now, when I think about the past, I'm experiencing my thinking, the feeling generated from thought about my past, not the actual past. I've also come to see that my parents were in a very low state of mental health, meaning we feel separated, seemingly separated from this ocean. The further we seemingly get away, we seem to lose our sense of love. The closer we get to it, the more loving we are. People do not do harmful and bad things. People who do harmful and bad things has got nothing to do with you, and everything to do with their own state of mind. It's not personal to you. You just happen to be within the physical location of them. And if it's your mum or dad or brother or best friend, you just happen to be there at the time. It's not personal. And seeing that, I realized that my parents were suffering. That's why they were doing what they were doing. And so when we, like you said in your video, life wasn't happening to me, life was just happening. We get perspective on all of it, and we're not saying bad things are right. We're not saying bad things are okay. We're not saying that. We're just saying we experience it via perception of it. And the crazier you get in your mind, the crazier things that you do. But who you do it to has nothing to do with the people you do it to.
Yeah, that's definitely some food for thought there. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
So we could kind of go on, and we'll take some more questions in a minute, but I just wanted to say before a lot of you leave, because it's very late for you guys in Europe there, if you'd like to deepen this conversation where we can actually have like a whole weekend doing this and go into much more detail and it's more interactive, we would recommend that you join our Nature's Mind Facebook group. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. Come and join us. And also, we've got a weekend coming up. Here is the link here. I'll just put that in the chat. This is the link to the Nature's Mind weekend, where we've kind of just really brushed over things really quickly because we're trying to do this, because again, it's very late for you guys in Europe. So we're going to have a whole weekend going into much more depth and detail where we use more personal experiences of this, more real life examples of what we're talking about, because we could only really had time to do it more kind of theoretically than experientially. And also what we've noticed from people who have attended the previous Nature's Mind is nothing short of mind-blowingly breathtaking. It simplified their lives. It opened the heart more to compassion. It took a lot of judgment off their minds. It unified three principles with many other things. I mean, I could pick on somebody who's been on it. I'm going to pick on Paul. Sorry, Paul. Can you say, just fairly briefly, Paul, what your experience was of the Nature's Mind?
Unmute him.
I'm sorry to pick on you, but actually I'm not, because I just did.
You have to unmute yourself, Paul.
I might be on his phone. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Can you hear me okay? Right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to pick on me. I just knew it. I thought I'm going to get out of here before they jump on me, but no, you got me too fast. Yeah, what did I? You know me. I loved the last Nature's Mind course. I was a big, still am, three principles fan, but law of attraction, and I always used to think that the three principles police were out to get me because I like one of your other callers said earlier, I thought I'm not allowed to meditate. I'm not allowed to think of the law of attraction. I'm not allowed to think, in fact. And the Nature's Mind course, as you've said this evening, brings everything together. It is all one. It all comes from the same source. It all comes from consciousness. And what we tend to do is particleize all of it and vilify some of it and praise some of it. It's all one big pool of wonderfulness, and you bring that together on this course. And I honestly can't say how fantastic it was. It lifted a lot of doubt about myself, a lot of doubt about other, well, not techniques, but other ways of thinking about life. And you bring it all together beautifully that you actually can just relax and enjoy your life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Beautiful, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. That's
You're
awesome.
welcome.
I was just reading some of the comments, and we do Nature's Mind Foundation and Intermediate, and we've yet to run an advanced. But the Intermediate course is the link that I've given you, and you can join on to that one because you can select the option that says include the recordings of the foundations. You can watch the recordings before, and then you can attend the Intermediate, so you can do that. Also, I am a big advocate of the three principles single paradigm because to me personally, it offers an incredibly objective, rigorous, pointed view on how the human experience works. So this logic is actually, you may think, well, how is that possible? But we kind of need to do it over the weekend, not in a quick webinar. But that logic is interwoven in every single thing that we do. And it gives simplicity and clarity to the wholeness of all of it. So this isn't a course where you have to do stuff. This is a course where you uncover and realize how not just the human experience works, but how this ocean where the human experience arises out of, how that works within the human experience too. So it's kind of a very broad understanding. So I hope that answers some of your questions. And so we've kind of gone a little bit over time. I just want to put it to you guys. Does anyone else have anything, any other comments or questions or anything before we go? I'll just leave it to you guys for a moment. Oh, we're getting lots of thank yous. Oh, and again, thanks, Paul, for saying. I would pick on a few others like Trevor here and Gretchen, and Beth, because they've been on the course. But we're gonna run out.
Trevor. I didn't see him. Oh, there you are, Trevor.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of people's time. Hi, Trevor. Okay, so thank you for watching. We'll send you the recording, but on a last note, forget everything we've said, okay? Just drop it. And just go and enjoy your life. Like, just love for your partner. I see Toby there. You've got a beautiful Wookiee-like dog there. Oh, cute. Go and enjoy your partner and your dog and your life. Don't think about this stuff, because the answer is simple. The answer, from my mind, is love. Everything else is just really a distraction. And really what we're doing is we're kind of talking about this stuff so we can point you back towards compassion. Because,
with the understanding, in my experience at birth, compassion.
Compassion means love and understanding. You understand the nature of yourselves, the nature of life or reality. Compassion, like Lee said, compassion is an implication of understanding. So this course helps you really understand the nature of stuff for you to lead a life more in love. And there's no life more beautiful than walking through life with a light heart and an okayness with what is. So
you're just naturing.
You are
molting as chickens do.
So guys, lots of love to all of you. Sorry we didn't have a lot of you commenting, because again, this is quick, but we'll love to see you at the weekend where we can go in a lot more detail and have it be a lot more interactive. Lynn, beautiful. Thank you. Marie, thank you from my heart. You are such beautiful souls. Thank you, Marie. Nikki, great call. Loved it. Thank you.
Oh, Thomas had his hand up. Oh, so sorry.
But we probably need to go now.
Okay.
So.
Oh.
All right, guys, lots of love to you. Thank you so much for listening, and join in Nature's Mind. If there's anything that you think, oh, I'm not sure about this, just put it in the group and we'll have a discussion about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So lots of love to you guys. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Lots of love to you.
Hugs.
Mwah. See you soon, guys.